Okay, good morning. Thanks for taking some time to just talk with us for a little bit. We are going to just take a few minutes to reflect on cluster from Friday. We were all there, so we just want to sort of think about a glow and a grow. Since this was the kickoff to Cluster Cycle 2, we really want to be thoughtful about ways that we can help both meet the needs of teachers, but also getting this to the student level. So you have in front of you the cluster observation rubric. We're just going to kind of skim and scan through it and think about something that you think was a glow from cluster on Friday and something that you think would have helped improve either for teachers or getting it out to the student level. So just take a couple of minutes for that. What do you think? Are you ready to start talking? Mm-hmm. Okay. Laura Lee, do you want to start?
I guess the area that I felt like, probably because the essence of, I went right to the grow. The area that I felt like this particular cluster didn't have a lot of that connection to the classroom at this week. That it was really personal, more reading and thinking about your own classroom. So the application was, I felt like, probably weaker than it will be obviously later in the cycle. The other area I wanted some feedback too about was that beginning, all of this information in the need or even the preview of the whole cluster, that seems long and not very interactive or engaging. So if that was maybe meaningful or kind of how to get all that information out in a more meaningful way. So those are kind of two things I've been thinking about when I think about that cluster.
I actually wondered that. That was one of the things that I thought about was when you were doing that introduction to the cluster cycle goal and the just the idea of metacognition, could you have started with, you did it later, having them think about what they knew about metacognition, could you have kicked it off with that and maybe just do a turn and talk? Or we haven't really done that much, but how do you start to get some teacher interaction during that first part of identifying need? Okay, what did you have for a glow?
I guess I felt like getting into the book and talking about this, I wasn't sure how the reaction would be, so I was really trying to watch for panic,
right.
Because I think there will be panic throughout this cluster cycle, so I was glad not to see it in the first day. It felt more like excitement. It felt like everybody has buy-in that this is where we want to go. Mm-hmm. Now when we get down into the nuts and bolts of it, I think it might be a little different, but I was glad to see that I think the choice to go to the reading you wanted to, either work together or alone, kind of emphasized the purpose of choose, do, review, and including that in working hard to get the actual strategy so teachers can experience it as learners first. Seemed to be pretty powerful, especially with that Friday.
And I thought it was interesting how many people could articulate that being able to make a choice was more motivating to them, and that they felt more engaged because of it, even as grown-ups. So,
I would like piggyback off that too and say like the excitement. I had a lot of fun in cluster. I mean, I have fun because whatever. I love the people I have cluster with, but just you could tell that there was like a sense of buzz in the room, and you know, working like Julie and I worked together, but we didn't plan to work together. We just happened to do the same thing, and you know, but we were able to do that, and it wasn't like a nope, work on your own. Like it happened to work out, and then we could choose to work together and put our. I don't know. It felt like it was meaningful content, which then I think helps add to that teacher excitement and buy-in. If you feel like if you can easily relate to it and be like, yeah, this is my perfect classroom, my ideal classroom, then it gets you that excitement that we're going to be given a roadmap to get there.
That was one of my biggest goals, was that establishing that sense of purpose. I mean, that was huge. And I think that's where the excitement came from, is people could really see that this was going to get you good things in your classroom.
But I think too with that is it also reaffirmed what people were doing. So like when you get that little like boost of, yep, you're doing some of this, but here are some other things, like I think that helps establish that purpose too, where it's like not all just a need, like you have some of it in place and you can go from there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So it feels like we're sort of all in agreement that our glow was sense of purpose, that there's some excitement around Choose, Do, Review because it feels meaningful, and that when we think about cluster delivery, giving our cluster members choice and having them kind of go through that reflective review process also helped for engagement and perhaps buy-in as well. Okay, so if we think about grows from the two of you, what do you think we could have done? And maybe we think about it in two ways. What could we have done differently in this cluster, but also thinking forward, what things do we want to do differently to continue to both be supportive and make sure that we're impacting student data?
I feel like it's kind of hard to do a glow because it was a intro to everything. Because I'm thinking right now, like, well, I didn't use any student information, but it wouldn't have been appropriate
We don't have any,
to use that. Because we need to first learn what it is before we start bringing student artifacts and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there wasn't any evidence of that, but I don't think it's fair to say there was no evidence because it would have just been doing a checklist. Like, you would have brought it because it says on here to do that. Now, if I think back to other clusters, we do that all the time. So,
but I think we can say that we want that to be a goal and a focus and I think based on our conversation too around value added and
right, the focus of the student needs to be strong. So in thinking ahead, that when they do start to bring the student reflections, that kicks off our need, and it's more than just that checklist, because I do feel like sometimes it's okay, check them off, they're high, medium, low, and then we move on to our new learning before really thinking about.
And if you go, because we probably are, to the 5, in sort of member participation and participation, those sort of bold things, increases instructional proficiency in their classroom, directly connected to the students they teach, and then down to the very bottom, bold, all members effectively transfer new learning from their students into the classroom. So sort of thinking about if those are our cluster planning goals, does that help us in planning cluster to make sure? But also when we think about follow-up, is our follow-up focused on students and kids?
Right. I'm excited to see how the follow-up will be, because we know that's been a struggle for us, is to figure out how to best follow up with our teachers. And I'm wondering if we give them some choice, and then we have to be diligent about getting to that follow-up and checking that board after every cluster and making sure. I hope that becomes more of a strength for us.
Helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's maybe try to do this again here in a couple of weeks. Let's do the next couple of clusters with this focus really on student achievement and taking it out into classrooms, and then maybe come back together once we've gotten into the meat of the cluster a little bit.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.